Hi guys, it is Thursday night, so you know what we're doing? We are going to be talking about Prodigy, also live from New York. I'm on vacation, and this is my dear friend Matthew Corcoran, and he has consented to be along with us on this ride. Obviously, I have William Wofford and Keith Shevlin. We are going to be talking about the most recent episode of Star Trek Prodigy. So if you haven't seen it, this is your opportunity to vamoose and then come back later. Otherwise, I think it might be time to roll that beautiful bean footage. All right. So after that amazing intro by William, hey, Keith, get what you get to do.
Yeah,
I know you're shocked by this point.
yes. One of these days, I'll just understand that I should probably join the show late, like certain other people. But okay.
Ooh, I mean, I'm sorry. Did you just cast aspersions?
Perhaps.
Yeah, it seemed like shade. It seemed like shade.
I know, right?
And I'm not. Yeah.
No, frankly, I don't mind it. It's like being needed. It's good. And it's not from screaming children, which is really good.
I know. This is actually going to be the first episode that I don't have screaming children. I just have screaming friends.
Fuck you. Can I say that?
And there's the first swear word of the episode.
To be fair, Matthew is in fact from New York City, so
It's part of the language.
It's just
I know.
part of our vernacular. I apologize.
Okay.
I mean, Jermaine did tell him not to swear, but yeah.
Did he? I missed that. I'm sorry.
So the episode All the World's a Stage, which is the 13th episode of season 1 of Prodigy, written by Aaron J. Walke, directed by Andrew Schmidt. It opens on the Dauntless as Janeway is speaking with their now awakened diviner and asking because he said the word protostar, and it shows a picture of Chakotay, and he isn't quite sure. He believes the ship. He says the ship was stolen. He says his daughter was taken. And his mission, the mission!
Also, can we talk about that weirdly white jumpsuit for a minute?
Yeah.
That's a thing. That's a thing that happened.
They're trying to make it seem like and I think it was called the last episode was like Transfigurations, where they're like, oh, you kind of forgot your memory, so I guess it's kind of like a thing of that, like, oh, you forgot your memory, you're not really who you are yet, so we're gonna make you look innocent.
Before we go off this picture, also, we need to acknowledge the incredible talent of the 4 voice actors that
Also
are
valid, yes.
here.
Yes.
John Noble, Jason Alexander, Kate Mulgrew, and Daveed Diggs.
I know. Like, he came
Of
out of
Hamilton
nowhere.
fame, yes.
That part.
Yeah. So
What happens next?
All right. So he goes into sort of Doro shock, and then we leave the Dauntless, not to return this episode. We return to the Protostar as it answers the distress call that we heard at the end of last week's episode, and also dealing with the fact that there is something wrong with Murph. Rock Talk is trying to care for Murph. Murph is all curled up into a ball on the bed, not feeling well, and Janeway tries to guide Rock Talk on it, but no idea what is going on with Murph, and it does not look good. They show up to this planet that has some issues with the atmosphere, but they find that there is a distress call. So Jankum, Gwyn, and Del and Zero beam down to the planet, and then come upon two men dressed in sort of Starfleet cosplay, or as they call it, Starflight. It turns out that there is the Enterprisons species on this planet have been heavily influenced by an ensign that came to the planet over 100 years before. They are greeted by James T. and his friend Sue Lu.
What's the hairlines?
I really want to talk about these terrible, terrible scenes, though.
They do not have.
Hairlines.
Okay. They have some interesting technology, but they do not have a sewing machine.
Apparently not. Yeah.
Do they have Bosley hair restoration services? They need them.
I think that's just what their hair is.
Oh
Oh,
god!
okay.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
So the crew is then is seen as the long-awaited Starflight, finally here to save them from the gallows. They are taken down to their where they're living, and they are shown the logs. You must watch the logs, and they reproduce the logs that they heard from Ensong, who tells them to stay out of the woods, or the gallows will get them. And that some of their people went out to see the gallows and came back sick and died. So now they stay hidden, but they live off of the logs that they have. That includes videos of how to operate certain machinery on the Starflight Enterprise. And they continue to follow his guide. One cadet Uhu Ra, accidentally wandered out to try to fight the gallows and comes back sick. And bringing her back in, Del catches the mysterious disease from Uhu Ra. Dr. Boones then takes them to their sickbay to try to treat them. Zero is helping, but without a cause, he has no idea. I'm sorry, because they have no idea how to cure them. So then, Ed Gwyn, and Jankum, and Rocktalk beaming down with EV suits go into this cave to find the gallows. And what they find is that it is a dilithium cave, and at the center is the Galileo from the USS Enterprise, the Class 4, I'm blanking on it, Class 4 shuttlecraft, seen in 3 different versions in the original series, including first the Galileo 7 from season 1.
Which is one of my favorite episodes, actually.
Yeah. I watched it again tonight after watching the first time I watched through this episode.
This is my shocked face.
Yeah, my oldest daughter was watching, going, this is so cringe. I'm like, yeah, it's from 1967, deal with it. About 5 times later saying, this is so cringe. I'm like, okay, this is not new information, and that's not going to keep me from watching it. So,
I am your dad. You are going to watch this. Like, embrace it.
yes. So they find that the warp nacelles of the Galileo is leaking drive plasma into this crevasse below, and that is the cause of the sickness. It is a dilithium radiation sickness. Zero is then able to create an antidote and cure both Del and Cadet Uhu Ra. But now the Gwyn, Rocktalk, and Jankum are getting onto the shuttle because the cavern is getting the buildup of the plasma is going to blow. They are able to use the radio, the transmitter on the shuttle to be able to contact the ship, but they can't beam them out. So Del beams up to the protostar with 3 of the Enterprisians. There'll be James T, Sue Lu, and Uhu Ra. And Janeway is able to restructure the bridge of the protostar as it would be to the Constitution class of the mid-23rd century, which they know how to operate from watching the the logs.
I'm sorry.
Well done, because yeah.
The historical documents.
And then they fly down into the cavern and are able to beam off Rocktalk, Gwyn, and Jankum just in time. They then help the people seal up the cavern so that they won't get sick, and expand expand the stage so that when they reproduce the logs, they can now reproduce the logs of this journey, including having a cardboard cutout of Jankum Pog, which they knock over for fun.
Jankum is never going to get over this.
So then they all fly off. The whole time throughout the episode, Del was facing the reality of not being real Starfleet, and here he finds people that are also not really Starfleet, but instead it guides him to really find his place, and that even though they can't contact Starfleet, they aren't really Starfleet, how they can still live by the Starfleet codes, live by the guidance. Then back on the ship, Rocktop returns to find Murph is now entered a chrysalis. To be continued.
That's a big word.
That's where you're going? Chrysalis is a big word?
That's a big word for Elmo.
I'm gonna mock you for that, like forever. And
so.
apparently you've killed Matthew, so well done.
I didn't know Kennedy Davenport was a part of the show, but you know.
Anyway, shall we continue?
Oh my God, are we working for Sebastian? Because I feel like we're working for Sebastian.
You know.
Okay.
Aaron's not here yet.
So yes, this is the Galaxy Quest episode of Star Trek Prodigy. How do we feel about the Galaxy Quest? Because personally, I am pro Galaxy Quest in all its forms. You?
Oh, absolutely.
Pro Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
Pro Galaxy Quest, anti Tim Allen, pro everything else.
That's fair.
Yes.
That is actually very fair. I like how you took that spin, because it's like you don't necessarily have to like or agree with the actor, but as far as their entertainment and the story that someone else wrote, in this case, Aaron, well, good job. Even though there's 0 people watching right now, good job. Yeah,
so
I liked it.
We know where the title comes from, right? All the world's a stage. A poor player that struts upon it. Full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
As You Like It specifically, yes.
There was a Picard and Q moment about this very line.
I thought there was a Macbeth reference too.
I thought Macbeth was on Undiscovered Country.
Macbeth was actually its own play, right?
I know that, but I'm talking about like as far as like lines go. Like,
Yeah, no.
Judging by what you consider this show to be, I will not refer to it by that name, but instead call it the
I mean, like it's technically the Scottish play. I know. Yes. But yes. So all the world's a stage. Again, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. We've had other significant works of art that reference this. For example, Faulkner's The Sound of the Fury, which is literally a story told by an idiot, which that was Faulkner's choice, not mine. So just go with it. What do we think about the title, guys? And how it works in this particular context?
You have to break it down. I'm sorry, please, Keith.
No, go ahead, Wayne.
It's a children's show, so so it's like a double, almost a triple meaning in a way.
Dude, we're gonna talk about your mic, man.
Whose?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so it's like we know it's Shakespeare. We know that there have been numerous other Shakespearean references throughout all of Star Trek. At the end of the day, we have a children's show. And we have to let them know, hey, all the world's a stage. These people are this planet. They see Starfleet 100 years ago, and now they're literally playing the roles. They even named themselves after some characters. One of them, actually, no, almost every single person out there was named off of an offshoot name of one of the Enterprise crew.
Yeah, I did enjoy Scott E. with
Scott
his
right?
horrible accent. But
right?
people need a hero. They need a miracle worker.
Instead of saying ensign, they said ensoon.
And song, yes.
In song. Like,
right. So have you ever played telephone?
Well, this is exactly what that is. Like,
Yeah.
Right. So what's interesting to me is that we're dealing with information that's been passed down and passed down and passed down and passed down forever, right?
right.
And now we've got this civilization that's based on it. I mean, I kind of wonder out of nowhere, if this is the sort of thing that we have to look forward to from the civilization that we saw in Piece of the Action.
The Sigma Iosians, yeah.
I think. Well, I actually had a question for you, Marie. And please chime in, my new friends.
Oh, he's asking you.
I don't know anything.
Okay,
We're gonna have to get Matthew
I
off
need to
his
grab
phone.
something. I'll be right back.
So we have this thing in Star Trek, even though it's a loose writing canon called the Prime Directive. Okay,
Right.
it basically means that when in Starfleet, most of the time it will be an advanced civilization. They cannot in any way interfere with the civilization development of another culture or another species if they have a warp flight yet. So until they reach that point, you cannot bother them. You cannot interfere. They have to do it on their own. Okay, that's where that came from. All right. Do you feel like the Prime Directive has been violated, knowing that these people have embraced their entire civilization based on their encounter with the Enterprise crew, even after 100 years?
So what's interesting about that is TOS was very much in the process of developing what became in TNG the Prime Directive. So in a number of episodes in TOS, we would actually consider what Kirk did to be a violation of the Prime Directive. I mean, I'm thinking A Private Little War. I'm thinking A Piece of the Action. I'm thinking Patterns of Force.
Definitely Patterns of Force.
Oh yeah,
right. Patterns of Force is in fact like a masterclass in don't do this shit.
So you're saying because it was the TOS era, even though they kind of mentioned it for the first time in Strange New Worlds, they kind of are loose with it in TOS, and then it becomes firm by TNG.
Right, because Strange New Worlds obviously comes after, right? I mean, we have to be aware of where we are in terms of franchise history, right? Because TOS was still developing a lot of the concepts of Starfleet. I mean, remember, like, the actual first episode of TOS, we saw, like, massive shifts in how things worked.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, everybody was wearing more or less the same turtleneck in a terrible color.
And it was referenced in Strange New Worlds that they were going to just start calling it the Prime Directive instead of General Order 1.
Right.
Oh.
And even then, though, like General Order 1 actually took a little bit of time to start showing up.
Right.
General Order 1 really only shows up when it's narratively convenient for it to do so.
Of course.
Matthew, did you watch the episode, darling?
No. I do have.
I will note that it's a piece of the action. Sigma Iosians. They were returned to that planet in the Star Trek Year 5 comic series, in which the society had now patterned themselves off a democracy inspired by the Enterprise crew.
Also, this is my shocked face that you have the comic photo,
including Spock running for president of Sigma Iosians.
I don't want to be like an interloper here.
You're
but
not.
I do. I always have a question whether or not the Prime Directive was an actual important thing to follow. And I'm more of a gaming nerd than a Star Trek nerd. And I was talking to Marie about this before the show about I've been playing the new Star Ocean, and there have been a lot of discussions in the new Star Ocean game which follows a lot of similar Star Trek motifs if you've ever played them before. And in the newest game, they're sort of like, is it important to like follow the Prime Directive when we reach an uncivilized world if it is actually to their detriment? And why do we care so much if we can actually benefit these new worlds in terms of providing advanced civilization and better progress and disease care, most importantly, which is a big motif in the Star Ocean series.
Right.
Falling, going on a tangent from Star Trek.
So I think this is the point where we have to center Star Trek in its time frame. Mm-hmm. So in TOS, there's not as much controversy about nation building. Because TOS is coming in the 60s, it's coming off of World War II, it's coming off of the Korean War. It's just sort of assumed that nation building is an acceptable activity. In the 80s, when we start in the 80s and 90s, when we start seeing TNG, it's a very different type of civilization. I don't know if you guys remember, but like the whole concept of Kosovo, like our intervention in Kosovo, was a hugely controversial move.
But
So
especially when you consider we did not go to Rwanda, but we did go to Kosovo.
Yes. And, like we didn't go to Rwanda because, racism. Yeah.
A
Right.
recurring theme.
In American history. Right. So I think the Prime Directive grows out of that 80s, 90s zeitgeist. And this whole conversation about how much and how far should American intervention go? Because I don't think we can ignore Star Trek's history as kind of like truth, justice, and the American way in space.
Right. Even though they kind of tried to make it that way, but we can't accept it as that way. Like
I think that's really the driving force, especially in TNG, right? Like TNG is very much grounded in ideas of American exceptionalism, also Western economic liberal thought, all of those things, and
appropriate at the time,
right? And they show up repeatedly. And that, of course, distinguishes itself from, say, Discovery, from, say, Strange New Worlds, when we have more data that indicates that perhaps, and I'm really nerding out here, guys.
Hey, bring on the history.
We're not going to talk about how long Matthew and I have been friends. We're just not.
All I know is he better add me on something.
You may or may not his note. Yeah, right. He's going to track you down through me.
Okay.
But anyway, I completely lost where I'm going, so I'm going to
you were kind of going on a history nerd tangent. Like,
but really, like, why are we shocked? We're 21 minutes in, so like, if I hadn't gone on a history nerd tangent, like Keith would have made me.
Of course.
I'll be honest. I'm very proud of us for actually staying in the subject this time. Like, and we're 22 minutes in. So I just want to acknowledge that. This episode's really interesting because the two things an additional two things have happened. One, it's kind of like what was it, Keith? It was the Voyager episode where at some point you know what I'm talking about, right?
One, yeah.
Yes, with the toxic thing. This is basically
the episode that makes no freaking sense whatsoever.
Well, they made sense this time.
This makes sense. That one makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it just makes no sense.
Even less sense than Threshold, and that's saying
right.
something.
So
wait, I'm sorry. Did you mention the episode of which we never speak?
Well, here's the thing. They actually had a ship. What was it, Galileo 1? Was it that what it's called? The shuttlecraft that was in the planet,
the Galileo,
yeah.
Galileo, right? And it was leaking from its core, and it just port nacelle, and it was causing all of this bad pollution. And I don't know why they didn't say it. It was radiation, like radiation. I guess an offshoot of radiation poisoning, making everyone sick, and they didn't know what was making everyone sick. That was one thing that I was like, okay, cool. And they mentioned it. They actually said it. Janeway said, hey, this is an official second contact mission. So, the rules are a little shaky, as we've learned in Lower Decks.
Valid. So, but I think this is, I actually want to talk about that a little bit, because yes, it's second contact.
Technically. In a way,
but also, we're looking at a society that is not anywhere near. Can we talk about the Frankenstein uniforms for a minute?
They have not made.
I see those poor hairlines.
I know. Okay,
that need Bosley.
We're just not going to get off that. All right,
I can't do it. I can't get off it. I'm sorry.
Like a Vulcan look.
That is a child who needs Bosley restoration services, and that is sad.
All right.
At least they have the same color hair as you.
They have the same, and yet my hairline is not that desperate.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Okay.
We are 24 minutes in, and this is where we get. This is where
Where we're going?
Okay, so just to clarify here, the whole ship did not arrive on this planet. It was just the Galileo, piloted by Ensign Garovic, and he's
Right.
the one who made
Right. No,
contact.
I completely understand that. And
Now, it was from the
certainly-
logs that he had that they learned about James T, Sulu, and Scotty, and all of them.
Right. And I certainly
he.
understand that as a concept, right? Like I get the idea that this is an inadvertent societal contamination.
Right.
But I can't not go back and look at the very particular quotation that was chosen for the title, right? Like, which is I mean, it does reference a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
And their whole planet is literally a stage from the
So what we're getting is this really interesting game of telephone where we have this initial contact that has just kind of like spiraled off, and then we get like Frankenstein uniforms, and it's this really interesting sort of tension between good intentions and then not so great impacts.
So how well do you feel like this episode was executed, since we get aspects of Voyager, aspects of TNG, and Galaxy Quest? How do you feel like this was executed, Marie?
I mean, considering that Aaron is now watching our show, I'm not going to comment.
Hey, Aaron, how you doing? I know you're watching.
It was brilliant.
It was
Because
absolutely
he has
brilliant.
never seen it.
I loved it. It was the best thing I've ever seen. Emmy nomination.
Emmy. Oh, okay. Emmy, absolutely. Yeah, you can tell he's in New York. Like, what was your favorite scene, Matthew? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.
The scene where things happen, and despite the poor hairlines of the characters, Can't let
He's
that
just
go.
going to be stuck on
Can't let
that
that go.
He's not gonna let that
broken
go.
record at this point. Yeah,
Now you see why I'm growing my hair out. Like,
that's why you're
Oh,
growing your hair out.
But your hairline's cute.
oh, thank you.
But I really, really love how the visuals go along with the sort of thematic underpinning, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you look at them, I mean, those are like Frankenstein-esque seams. And I say this as someone who has actually constructed garments. Like, that is a Charlie Foxtrot.
Mhm.
I'm going to call it a Charlie Foxtrot because Jermaine has already told me that, like, I've got to rein my language in. So here we go.
Well, I thought it was very well executed, being the fact that if you're looking at this from a child's audience, you're getting more of the Star Trek lore. You're getting more of what Starfleet is, and it's hitting at exactly the right time for Del and the crew, because Del, especially in this episode, is feeling like any chance of them being part of Starfleet is going away now. And he even admits in the episode that we're not Starfleet. We're just faking it. Yeah. But then, of course, it's the sage words of Dr. Boones, who says, "We know we're not Starfleet. We're not real. But even though we don't have a ship, we can still follow the principles. We can still follow the teachings." And here Del has the ship. So he's a step above where the Enderprisians are.
Can we briefly talk about where, like,
Yo-yo?
William froze there? Yeah, and that's and again, going back to the title, that's actually one of the things that I really like about this, is because it takes it from the concept of a tale told by an idiot and actually redeems that by recognizing that even if you're not necessarily part of this organization, you can embody the moral messages, right? And I cannot think of anything that is more important as a message for kids. Like, the kids aren't going to be and us, like, as viewers. I mean, like we're never going to be members of Starfleet, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't embrace things like IDIC, that we can't, recognize the importance of diversity, that we can't recognize the importance of respecting others' opinions, respecting others' cultures, and like moving forward together as a community in with scientific data. I mean, that's why we still come back to start. I mean, I've said this before, and I'm sure everybody who has watched this podcast is real done listening to me say this, but that's what keeps us coming back to Star Trek, right? That's what keeps us fascinated with this franchise, because it's a franchise that is uniquely devoted to this concept of hope and this concept that we work together to solve this and move forward. And this is, I think, one of the best episodes in Prodigy that really shows that.
Well, one thing Prodigy has done overall is always made it a group effort from this crew. It's not one person stepping forward, and that's one reason. When you look at a lot of people who rag on Discovery, they say there's no hope, and it's the Michael Burnham hour constantly. They expect it to be a group effort, and it isn't in their eyes. But Prodigy really has stepped up the group effort, making everything come together. And
it's like, how do you work together as a team, even though your organization, is just not there? Like,
I think the people who are talking about the Michael Burnham hour are fundamentally misunderstanding what's going on in Discovery.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 1,000%.
Because what Michael is doing is Michael is learning how to work as part of a community.
mm-hmm.
She is coming from being an outsider. She's coming from being trained as a Vulcan. She's learning how to negotiate where she fits in a crew.
Right.
And frankly, I cannot think of anything else that is more Star Trek.
Absolutely.
So you feel like, well, I don't know if you know this, but did the boys get a chance to watch this tonight?
They did not. To be fair, I actually left this morning at 8:03. So they had to go to school.
And Keith, the same question goes to you, if it applies.
Yeah, I watched it with my oldest daughter.
Okay,
after watching the Galileo 7 from the original series.
Okay,
which is one of my favorite episodes and is a really interesting exploration of racism.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna ask, how did Prodigy translate so far for both of your kids? That's what I was gonna ask.
Well, my youngest didn't watch it. She grabbed her iPad and went and hid in her room, which is what she tends to do nowadays. She's 9, going on 17. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Don't pretend like you wouldn't be that.
I have cats for that reason.
Yeah, my youngest absolutely loves Lower Decks. We've watched every episode multiple times. She loves it that much. But when I'm trying to get her to sit down for any other Star Trek, I can't get her to.
I mean, Lower Decks. I don't know if this is an appropriate term, but I think Lower Decks does a good job at using what could be interpreted as dark humor in Star Trek. Like, it's like I look at Lower Decks for teenagers, Prodigy for children, and the rest of Star Trek for adults.
Well, I wouldn't say that Lower Decks was. I mean, it's a mix of it's humor, definitely. I wouldn't say dark humor alone. It's part of it.
Okay. Because they tried to make it look like Rick and Morty for a minute.
So my kids are actually really terrified of Prodigy.
Why?
Why is that?
But you have to remember they're 4. Okay.
Okay.
So they're constantly afraid that something terrible is going to happen to Dal. There's, like constantly afraid that something is terrible is going to happen to the rest of the crew. They haven't actually sort of processed the same rules of the franchise that the rest of us have.
Yeah. Well, going back to last week when you said how the Borg seemed to be softened, yeah, there was no way any of them were getting assimilated. So even when they were taken by
absolutely,
they're not going to be assimilated.
Even though 7 was assimilated as a child, they're not going to show it on a children's show. Like, you're not going to do that.
But what's interesting is my kids were not afraid of the Borg. they were terrified of Dal's Ferengi adoptive mother.
I can understand
because
that,
their
actually.
favorite character on Deep Space Nine is Quark.
I can actually understand that because I've seen people like that in this world.
Yep.
I haven't. Well, I can't say that I've seen anyone that is specifically Borg-like, but I've definitely seen people that are Ferengi-like.
You clearly are not hanging out in the same group I am.
Well, you're in the land of enchantment, but usually in.
Ooh. By that you mean the land of entrapment?
Yes, I figured I'd set you up for that one.
We usually call it New York City. Thank you,
Well,
Keith.
well, no, that's where she is right now. I'm talking about where she is right now.
He's talking about New Mexico.
Oh, yeah. I know nothing. I know nothing about that.
You've been there.
I like how Matthew is using every possible opportunity to chime in on stuff that he knows he can talk about. I love your gay energy. I'm here for it.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Shall I be a typical white man and chime in on the things that I don't know about?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I mean, you have permission from me. Like, I will temporarily.
I think it's
my black
rational. I
card.
think he needs permission.
Exactly. So, like, I'm gonna go get my charger. My computer's gonna die. So y'all talk about.
Please don't let your computer die.
I won't. It's not that. No, I got time. Just y'all talk about something. Talk about Matthew.
Well,
Talk amongst yourselves. I get you.
Yeah,
One thing I really love about
get your bourbon, get all you need.
Oh no. William does not do bourbon because if William did bourbon, he would die.
I would absolutely die.
Came back in just to chime in on that point.
Just to chime in on that, I was like, hold the hell on. Burst the motherfucking all up.
Yeah, no, we're clearly professionals on Truckers
Okay.
Delayed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting because like my kids, I don't know about yours, but my kids are like, and because we watched a lot of Deep Space Nine, I tried to watch the original series with them, and they were like entirely bored. Which fair play. All right.
Also full.
Right, they're 4. Deep Space Nine, however, they were really fascinated by, and they grasped the rules, if you will, really quickly. And they were like, all right, so these are the primary characters. They're not going to die. But the rest of them, in as much as a 4-year-old is aware of what die means, the rest of them are up for grabs. But when they watch Prodigy, they're really concerned. Really, really concerned. So, for example, like when the Ferengi character was abusing Dal, they were terrified for him. Just terrified.
Would you say that's because on Prodigy it kind of hits home a little bit more since it was meant for them?
I'm not really sure that that's necessarily true. Because as one of the things that I keep saying about Prodigy is that Prodigy is remarkably sophisticated because it never assumes that kids are not a sophisticated audience, because they are. In many ways, I actually think they're more sophisticated than adults, because whereas we're willing to sort of like give a show room to sort of develop what it's doing, a child's going to do that. A child's going to be like, yeah, no, that's bullshit, and then just like shut it down.
Oh yeah.
And they've never done that with Prodigy. They are, hi Manny.
Hi.
Yeah,
Keep
Manny's
it
been
going.
commenting. I wondered when he was going to jump in on this.
Keep it
I know,
going.
right?
Good to see you guys.
But my kids have at no point have my kids ever watched a Prodigy episode and been like, this is not believable. This is where we've gone too far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's one of the, and again, I know I keep saying this. I know I sound like a broken record, and I'm super sorry. But what I love about Prodigy is that it never underestimates the intelligence of children.
I actually want to chime in on the Ferengi bit. I've never told anyone this, not even my own mother. Obviously she knows now, but
I mean, also, did you say your mother, like,
right, well, yeah. So
I
anyway,
got research.
I used to be terrified. I mean, absolutely fearful of Ferengi. I was scared. I was so scared. I was their age, actually about 4 or 5 years old when I watched Deep Space Nine for the first, not knowing what I was watching. And when I watched it and I saw Quark, the season 1 version of Quark, I was like, oh, what is that? What is it? And then I started having nightmares of Ferengi trying to get me, trying to eat me, and I was that scared. So for the next 5 years up until I was like 10, I was scared of Ferengi. So so if that's the case, and we see that even your children are kind of like, I don't. Were they afraid of Quark, or was it just that one lady in Prodigy?
it was really just that one lady in Prodigy.
Okay.
They very rapidly understood that Janeway was kind of like a maternal figure. They call her Mama Jane,
Jane A.
Nice.
which is possibly the cutest thing I've ever heard. And they recognize that like Dal and Gwyn and Rock Talk are kind of like them.
Right.
Yeah,
And they recognize that like
Sorry.
so that's been, I mean, I have to admit it's been really interesting. I have to be a little more choosy about which episodes I watch with them
Mhm.
because I'm not particularly interested in dealing with the fallout of I don't want to give them nightmares. And some of the episodes of Prodigy would tend toward that.
Right. Right.
I don't think this one would.
Yeah. Yeah,
Manny,
yeah. This is more of the standard. Hey,
you did
can
you
you
so
all
you
hear
got
me?
to watch it.
yes, we can hear you, Manny.
I did. I got up early. I watched all three. I caught up on Prodigy because I need inspiration. That Borg Cube episode and the implications of it and what I've read, I definitely want to do an episode on that because, um, and the Chakotay angle and all that. I mean, they're moving the plot forward finally. Like it's less of a mystery, but um, the idea that this has implications to like the actual modern like Picard seasons now is huge, right? Like that is the actual, as you said, like that guy, that writer. I put a comment in the actual thing, like that writer said, well, maybe this is that same exact cube, the artifact. So I'm very excited to like explore that idea.
Yeah, that was something I was willing to poo-poo last week, but now in hindsight, yeah, maybe it was the same cube.
You know, it doesn't need to be the exact same cube, although he's intimating that it is. It could just be another like random cube, even though it looks exactly like it and stuff like that. But the implications of Zero being a known species and being assimilated, very big because non-corporeal species.
Yes.
And the what if that I wanted to come out of that, and I read an article from Screen Rant is, you know, there's always been this thing about the Borg versus the Dominion, and if they
Mhm.
could be assimilated, they can assimilate non-corporeal species, right? They can apparently
The Borg
somehow.
founders. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very
Also,
interesting. I wonder.
can we have a moment to talk about like why that's so scary? Like why that's the boogeyman for TNG specifically?
Like assimilated changelings or what?
Yeah.
No, just the like the Borg was actually set up to be like the main big bad for
Yeah.
For that.
TNG, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
After
80s
they
and
failed,
90s.
after the failed introduction of the Ferengi, yes.
We're just gonna let that slide because there are so many issues with that we're gonna have to have a whole episode on why that was awful. And light whips is only part of it.
But when we did an episode of Opposite Tracks, Marie, I don't know if you remember, Mo brought up the fact that the Borg was scary philosophically because it was the opposite of the Federation,
Yes.
collectivist versus. It was a very interesting point. I never thought of it that way before.
Yes. And what's interesting is because I wonder very much if the Borg would be as frightening now. Like, what about the Borg would be terrifying? Whereas in the 80s and 90s, the concept of losing your individual
Mm.
words are hard.
Individuality. I
Well,
think.
it's been a long day. I've been
think
on
to answer
I've
that
been on a
question-
plane since 8 a.m. So
I think to answer that question, why? Well, okay, as Trekkies, for all of us, there's really no reason for us to fear the Borg because we know literally everything about them.
Well, now we
but
do.
even beyond
More.
that,
Before we didn't.
but even beyond that, Star Trek's ethos has been that infinite diversity and infinite combination, which is this concept of combining what makes you special, what makes you interesting, what makes you tick as an individual, and you
Mm.
build that in a community to the greater effect, to the best use for that community. And the Borg actually take that away and create what is a community, but not at the same time.
They
Right.
corrupt the idea. Yeah.
It's the old Borg,
Yes.
you know? And
I
so this
mean,
new
pre-Q,
Borg,
pre-Picard, yeah.
Free everything. This
Mo
was like
would say, go ahead.
this is
Mo
what
would
they
say,
were-
come in and be like the reasoning, you know, like that, that it's the idea that if you start to draw a circle around the Federation, again, I would push back on this, of course. His point was that once you draw a circle around it and you say that this is the club that you're in and this is the club that's without, you're necessarily doing violence to those who are without and not within. And I'm not saying that. I disagreed with him, but
Right. And I think there's a validity to his argument. And I kind of wish I'd been on this episode, I'm not gonna lie. I think there's a validity to that argument, but I think it kind of ignores what the Federation is trying to do. And that's what Janeway is doing for the Prodigy crew, is trying to teach them to leverage their own unique gifts
yeah,
for the betterment of a larger whole.
yeah,
Now, I will agree with Mo that message doesn't always come through effectively.
hmm
Because again, I mean, we're writers. I mean, there are writers, there are, production issues, blah, blah, blah. And all of this is coming from a zeitgeist from society.
yeah.
And society is not always great at that, shall we say.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot there, lots of plot.
So Chakotay is prisoner somewhere.
Yeah.
That's what we're taking away from that? Like this
No,
deep
no.
conversation, and you're like, oh, by the way, Chakotay.
No, but I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of implications to these episodes.
I thought that would make you happy.
Okay.
You
So,
said, well, you-
Robert Beltran coming back in. Sorry, Keith, go ahead, man.
No, go
So
ahead.
on Voyager, Janeway, when the ship was lost in the Delta Quadrant, Janeway said the thing that is going to keep us together is Starfleet. Starfleet principles. Starfleet as the core, as the backbone of our ship.
Right.
But
Now-
the best parts of Starfleet.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's an important distinction.
Hmm.
Yeah. There isn't a single mention of a certain section on Voyager. For good reason.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you're right. There
And
is.
somewhere Jermaine is twitching.
Hey, I mean, that's Jermaine. He's waiting for Aaron to comment something like, "Oh, wow."
So, but what we have Janeway as this paragon of the virtues of Starfleet on Voyager, and it's continuing now on Prodigy in her hologram version. She is bringing all this diverse crew together, first with
Yeah.
communication and then with
Mhm.
that backbone of Starfleet principle. And you
Yeah.
could see that was slipping away from Dell after the feeling that we can never actually be part. And this episode reinforces the idea that even if you never get to actually join Starfleet, you could still be Starfleet.
Yes. Oh, I agree completely. I think that the implications of this episode. So the launching, when they're doing the resimulation of, like, the real Janeway is doing the simulation, whatever, and he's like, "Well, you can go out there with a hologram or whatever." And if I ever need advice, like, of course, yeah, the Tellarite. Is that a Tellarite doctor, by the way?
Yes.
It
Yes.
is, right? Yeah. drawing them so
Which
strange.
I mean, I know his name is like Nayum or whatever, but like for me, it's
Nayum.
Jason Alexander.
Noun Noon.
It's
Definitely.
just another Think Tank episode.
No, it's not.
Because Jason was on
It's-
that one.
There's a lot of implications, I think, from Janeway finally coming back to the Federation, regrouping. Now she's a vice admiral. Now he's a captain. We're starting to see the post-Voyager world. It's a very exciting thing. It's fertile ground because all of these places are like overlapping.
Yeah.
Like I want to see the time frames of how these things overlap. The implications of the uniforms, the ships, the crew, the actual
Yeah,
directives.
they give us star dates, but we can't figure out. We know that the star dates that they've given on Prodigy so far fall before the star dates they give on Picard, but after the star dates they give in Lower Decks. So it's in between the two.
I think the only two shows where the star dates have significantly changed were Discovery and Prodigy, because we learned in Prodigy that there was significant time travel involved. Like,
Well, I mean,
You mean the Vonnegut?
the diviner, yes, is coming from the future, but the crew is still within the time frame of where we would expect to be if Trek had continued forward after Voyager instead of
it sounds
resetting
like
after Enterprise.
it sounds like they're in the timeline that is shortly after Lower Decks. Shortly, judging from the uniforms of Vice Admiral Janeway.
Well, the first
They're
star
four
date that was
epaulets.
given, the first star date that was given was in episode 8, Time Amok. It was 607125.6.
I did see that it was in the 6s. Yeah.
Hold on, let me try to find. I had it.
While Keith finds his thing, I'm gonna respectfully bow out. I have a day full of kiddos to get to. It's great to see you guys. Inshallah, we'll catch up soon.
Thanks for coming, man.
Anytime,
Love
man.
you.
Good to see
It's
you,
so
man.
good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, sorry. Okay, and Lower Decks, the last star date we heard in trusted sources, 58496.1. So 58496.1 for season 3, which we know is 2382, is what's implied. While here for a Prodigy, we're at 6071. 607125.6.
So before we go down like a
The
little
rabbit
late,
hole of time.
Yeah.
right, the rabbit hole of star dates, can we just really appreciate for a minute like how global not only like Star Trek is, but Trekker's Delight is?
Oh, yes.
Manny and everyone and the amount of guests that we've had. I think it's the first time we've had someone from New York, on the show.
Right. I mean, it's kind of amazing because, I think about it, and we have, yes, like there are other franchises that have global reaches, but I kind of wonder if we have the same sort of history with, like just the influence on technology. Like, for example, Matthew and I were talking today about owning all of our really old cell phones. And he pulled out a whole bunch of like the flip phones.
I kept mine too.
I got mine.
I hope to use them as props one day.
But I mean, the flip phones were directly inspired by the communicators from TOS.
Yes, which we saw. They actually did a close-up shot of the original TOS communicator that apparently was left behind on that planet.
Well, by the end,
Because apparently that's a whole thing.
Yeah, it happens. I found
also,
this
I love that you have one handy.
It's right here. It's
I
right
would love.
in front of me
I mean,
the whole time.
admittedly, I would love to say that I don't have one, but that would be a lie. And also, I don't have it at hand because I'm not home.
Yeah. I
Because I am
things that are
live
handy as
from New
well,
York.
So, I have a lot of things easy to grab just in case.
Matthew's
sorry,
over here like, this is the only reason you've allowed me on the show is because
I'm
you can
sorry.
tell
I'm
I-
literally just imagining Matthew with a communicator right now. Will, I'm at Club Shenanigans. I'm really drunk and I'm about to get raped. Please come pick me up in about 45 minutes.
I have never been at Club Shenanigans. I have never been about to been raped. I've always consented. And
Oh gosh, I didn't know I was just gonna turn the camera on you.
Yeah, let's get away from that as fast as we possibly can.
That went somewhere I didn't expect.
y'all asked for it.
I mean,
No, we
Val,
did not. No, we did not.
I've got to get him on LGBT Trek After Dark.
I mean, that's gonna happen on Sunday.
Oh, I'm here for it. I'm gonna bring all
Okay.
the Aaron,
We
if you
got,
want,
we got about 5
I
minutes.
mean,
left,
and Keith is like, I'm not.
this Aaron, Keith is like,
I love that shaking head. No.
I'm the good one here. I'm the responsible one here, and Jermaine is just like, Lord have mercy. Happy anniversary, guys.
Is it really our anniversary show?
I just because I narrowed it down to the 3rd and the 10th.
Oh my
Okay,
god!
today's the 10th, so yeah.
Today's the 10th. So we
You
can
know, happy year of talking about all. the
Yeah,
amazing
a
things
year.
that happened in Star Trek.
a year. Hold on. Wait, shit. Oh God, please don't pop. Oh God, I'm scared.
I'm gonna need you to hurry up, William.
I am. No.
William, come on. We're holding here. Come on.
Ah!
I can't believe it's been a year, guys. That is not how you pour wine.
Hell. So, guys, it's been a year. Cheers.
Cheers
yeah.
to that.
There. Woo!
Mm,
To family.
right? I mean, also to be fair, and you know, like verging into maudlin territory, I have to say that one of the primary themes in Star Trek is found family, and you know, that's kind of what Trekker's Delight has been.
It truly has. I mean, can we talk about that for our last 4 minutes? Like this past year, like the exact date is a little bit vague. I just know that it's between the 3rd and the 10th of November that we did our first episode because it's somewhere lost in the Delta Quadrant right now. But
I love how specific you are on that.
yeah, I just know that it's the first 2 weeks in November. And and the rest is history. So, like, what has been going on for the last year? We've been through so much.
I know, right? I know. But I mean, but again, like one of the important, like I said, one of the important thematic underpinnings of Star Trek has been this idea of found family and, forming connections with people that you wouldn't ordinarily have done. And Trekker's Delight is about that. Like we've got Manny on the other side of the world. We've got Keith where he is, and we've got you. We would never have met except for Star Trek, which is kind of like how Starfleet works.
Go ahead, Keith.
I've experienced that playing the Star Trek Timelines game. I talk to people in my fleet that are in Australia, that are in Europe, that places all around the globe, and I've made friends. Like some of them I've connected through Facebook and made friends on that, all because of our mutual love of Star Trek. And I've been fortunate now, 14 weeks, just over 3 months, I've been welcomed onto your show, and you haven't kicked me out yet.
Because we love you.
Because we love you. Like we never actually booted anyone off the show. We'll have
that is really not. That's really not where we're going with that.
We just, yeah. We love you, Keith.
I mean, you're undermining it, William.
Yeah, it's like we love you, but we've never actually kicked anyone out.
I'm sorry, I didn't finish this. So
I mean, like I'm gonna need you to pour some more wine and like stop talking.
I really want to have a drink with the boys over there and talk shit all night. That's what I want to do.
I mean, that's the recording on Sunday.
I know. I'm just. Oh.
So, by the way, just in the last couple of minutes, just to promote what's going on is once again Trekker's Delight is actually starting to going back to its original content schedule. So we are seeing a lot more content that's coming up on every day of the week. For me, we've got FTP and also LGBT Trek. Keith has
Memory Delta, a new series where we'll be reviewing Star Trek comics, gaming, and books. So going into what is Memory Beta, the licensed Star Trek materials, but not on screen. We'll be doing reviews weekly, talking Star Trek comics, talking Star Trek books, gaming such as Timelines and Lower Decks, Prodigy Interactive. and so on from there.
We've got Parallels coming out, which is really fascinating. That comparison contrasts different episodes. William, do you have any projects?
I have Black Trek that will be coming out on Saturdays, and so we will be discussing how it is an offshoot of FTP, which is Fight the Patriarchy, headed by the lovely Marie Brownhill, and we also share.
I love that.
We also share a show. I think it's safe to assume that it's like a 50-50 show with LGBT Trek.
I mean, to be fair, I think we share both shows, really.
Yeah. But Black Trek is mainly designed to look at how certain social issues between different races in Trek, whether they're Federation or not, and how they mirror what's it called? Civil rights history in America.
Mm-hmm. So I certainly hope that if you're following us, that you like and subscribe to the channel, because we are going to have all kinds of new and interesting content, and we'd love to see you commenting and interacting and telling us what you'd like to see more of. However, we have reached the hour mark, so unfortunately we are going to have to let you all go, and unfortunately and certainly my hosts in New York are like, come on, Marie. So thank you, William. Thank you, Keith. Also, thank you, Manny, for joining us briefly. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Next week's episode of Prodigy is called Crossroads. Whether that includes a Britney Spears appearance, we'll see.
And there's an image that I'm going to take with me. Thanks, Keith.
So also, Aaron, if you're watching this right now, remarkable job. Thank you.
And if you want to see more of the Galileo, it is going to Ticonderoga, New York, to be part of Star Trek: The Original Series 4.
I am not even going to lie. I'm actually working on getting a group together to go.
I went up there back in 2017, had no idea it was there. I went to Fort Ticonderoga and went over, and it was.
I clearly have the time now.
Well, they're building the Next Generation set. So sometime in the next year or two, they're going to be able to open up the set of the Enterprise D. But yeah, it is quite an experience. I highly recommend it.
All right, guys. I think, after that amazing prop for possibly a Trekker's Delight pilgrimage, I'm going to call it. I don't know. It's time for that beautiful bean footage.
Later, guys.
Bye, guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to ever say it on the internet. Yeah, never. Yeah. Oh my God.
I'm sorry. Wait. There was a shadow of a church.
Okay. What?
William has questionable ideas about what he puts. William has questionable ideas about what he puts on the internet.
Oh, I remember that episode.
Uh-huh.
I remember that episode. Yeah.
Wait. What?
We put on an audio version of this podcast.